So, I have power supply problems. Now, I've had this power supply probably nearly 10 years. I've always found it to be decent and reliable. Never had a problem with it in the past. And it was fairly cheap, I think. And I think it was about just over 120 pounds. And for what you get for that price, it's pretty decent. It's 2 channels, 0 to 30 volts at 5 amps on each channel. Of course you can parallel them, so you've got 10 amps, or you can series them if you want higher voltage. And recently I was testing a little circuit board, and I went to adjust the voltage from I think 5 volts up to a bit higher, and I noticed when I was turning it down it suddenly went up. I think it went up to about 15 volts, and I suppose it will do it now. But that was, yeah, it jumped, you see, suddenly jumped up, yeah, up to 12 when I was right down. I have to keep pressing this button, which is really annoying. So if I keep turning it left, you see, anti-clockwise, eventually it goes up when it should be going down, even though it got to 0. So I know what the problem is, because I've come across this problem before, not in power supplies but other devices. It's the rotary encoder, and I think this channel is fine, probably because I use this channel more than I do the right channel. So I turn this one down. Might be a little bit dodgy, it's difficult. And I think it's fairly good, but it's the rotary shaft encoder, and that could be fairly disastrous in a power supply. If you're turning the voltage up or down slightly and it suddenly jumps up to something ridiculous, it would destroy your circuit possibly. I was lucky that it didn't damage the board I was working on, but as I said, it's the cheap and nasty rotary shaft encoders. And the other problem I had with one of those was, if I move around here, in this little hi-fi unit, which is a TIAC tuner, amplifier, CD player. Now this one was really irritating, because you'd be turning the volume down and it suddenly start blasting the speakers out because it had gone up instead of down. So I took it all apart, and that was about 5-6 years ago. Took the shaft encoder out off the circuit board, I think, and took it apart. There's not too much in there, and cleaned it thoroughly with alcohol, and they have quite a bit of grease in them as well, so I had to clean all the grease off and put new grease in, and now it seems fairly reliable. So I know what the problem is with the power supply. And I can put the camera back. So I've got the rather irritating and annoying job of getting that power supply apart and probably taking the board off the front panel, removing the shaft encoder, and luckily it doesn't have too much stacked above it, so I only need to remove the frequency counter really, and the dummy load for the speaker testing. So I think I'll get it out from where it is. We'll have a look inside. Okay, well, it wasn't too hard to get it out of there. We just had to remove the frequency counter basically, and loads of dead things underneath. They all seem to come in this workshop to die, sadly. and I just noticed that I've got this stuff on top which I've stuck down with double-sided tape. That's obviously to set the frequency counter on top of. But onto the main event, I suppose. Taking it apart. Don't know why I'm videoing taking a power supply apart, because it's not exactly interesting, is it? I need something to put the screws in. Lots of screws on it. There's at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. No, 5 on this side. I think it's decent, well-made power supply. Got it from CPC. Tenma is the mate, and they were doing a special offer, so I bought it at a reduced price, and a hell of a lot cheaper than the last power supply I bought in 1984. That was a Farnell, and one of the I suppose few that had a digital readout in those days. I think that was well, it was only 2 amps per channel, 0 to 32 amps, and I think that one cost me over £300 30 odd years ago, maybe nearly 40 years ago. And the main reason I changed to this one was because of the fact that it could produce more current. Right, so it appears you don't need to take the handle off, which is good. These are annoying leads, need to go somewhere, if you can still hear. So what have we got in here then? Don't want to damage the sockets. We've got 2 circuit boards, so there's a fair bit of disassembly to do. Quite a lot of it's really dark, isn't it? You can't see anything. Yeah, so maybe that's a bit better probably. It's got loads and loads of resistors on there. I wonder what they do. I don't really care what they do, to be honest. As long as it does what it's supposed to do. And there's a nice transistor. They're all regulated. It's bent, so that didn't get spotted in quality control. But I think this is going to be fairly annoying to take apart. But I think it has to be done. Otherwise, you're looking at an unreliable power supply. So I'm going to have to, I think, unplug all these plugs and mark them if they're not already marked, and slowly try and disassemble it so I can get to the front circuit board. So I won't bother you with all that because it will take a long time, and I'll come back when I've achieved something. I don't think I'm going to need to take this one out, because I don't think I'll bother cleaning this shaft encoder at the moment, because it seems to be fine. I'll just do the really nasty one. So I've now got to this point. I've unplugged as many cables as I need to, well, all of them basically, onto those, to that board, and I've marked them so I know where they go back in. And I think this top board will need to come out first. That one, is that one marked? That one goes to there. Yeah, it is marked. It's got a 1 on it. Anyway, I think I need to get this top board out, and then maybe that's give me access to the board with the shaft encoder on. I'll need another little container with different size screws, self-tapping. Nice big current shunt. No current shunt on the other side, other power supply. Don't know why that is, but whatever. No, that doesn't make anything any easier. Ah, there's one down there. Maybe. That doesn't want to come out. Okay, we'll do the next one down. All the same screws, no problem. Self-tapping screws all the same. Now, does it come out? Obviously not. So, what's holding that in there then? Ah, two more screws hidden away. Gotta try and remember where all these go. But it's pretty obvious where they go. No, still doesn't want to come out. Nothing on there is holding it. Power switch is on it's just fixed. It's not on the board. Output connections, they wouldn't be a potential problem because they're on their own separate board. So, what am I doing wrong? I don't know. I really don't know. Can't see any more screws. That was interesting. It was plugged in. Okay. So that comes off there like that, yeah. Comes off like that. There's the shaft encoder. So I couldn't have got access to that without taking that board out. And that shaft encoder looks like it plugs in, which is fairly helpful. Same size screws. Is that soldered in? Dear. I think it's being held by this bit here, which looks like a plug, but possibly it isn't. But now, wouldn't it be easier to take this board out, maybe? Ah, well, that's a longer one. I'm going to mark that L. And that's not a longer one. Oh well. I'll remember. There we are. That's the offending shaft encoder. Move all this rubbish out of the way. Get it camera repositioned. The thing to do really now is just to desolder that. It doesn't plug in either, so that board needed to come out, and I think I'll get on with that off camera, get that shaft encoder out, see if I can get it apart. If I can't get it apart, I think it'll be okay. I can see the tabs that fold over on the back of it. So here it is. Came out fairly easily. There's only 3 connections to these. I thought there were more, but obviously that's enough. So I've now got to get these little tabs bent up without breaking them off. And I think I'm going to have to do that off camera because I want to be absolutely certain I don't damage anything. So here we are. That's the inside of the shaft encoder, and these are the contacts which get a bit of wear on them, corrosion, causing them to what's the word, be unreliable, I suppose. And then you've got the tiny little spring wipers, and they're going to need a clean. There's not much to them really. A little bit of grease, maybe. Don't think there is. Don't think there's any grease on there. The last one I took apart had the whole inside of this filled up with, well, not completely filled, but it had a layer of grease on it. And that might be a good thing to do, because that will prevent possible oxidization getting in there. So now what I need to do, I think, is just get some isopropyl alcohol on it, and I'll do that in a minute. Okay, let's try and give this a clean. Got a little pot of isopropyl. Yeah, it's fairly dirty in there. Fairly dirty. Because there's no sealing on them, is there really? You get a bit of damp in there, and that's what causes the problem. Cheap, nasty shaft encoders, I'm afraid. Sure they wouldn't use them in Hewlett Packard or whatever it's called these days. They'd probably use something a bit high-end. Just trying to get these little fingers. I don't know whether to put grease in it, decide it or not. Can't see does it do much harm if I did. If I can find some grease. Put a little bit of grease in there, and I want to spread it around a bit. A bit more maybe. Right, so it's got a fairly good layer of grease on there. Get all this off the side, grease. So I guess it's time for time to tidy up the bench for one thing. Get rid of this alcohol before I drink it. I did taste it once to see what it tasted like. It wasn't very pleasant, so I won't be getting drunk on that today. And reassembly I don't think it really matters too much which bit goes round which way, and that's all there is to it really. Just got to bend the little tabs back. Making sure you've got the thing completely seated in there right. I think I need a hole in the bench so I can squash them. Let me go and find a hole in the bench so I can give them an extra bit of squashing down. Okay, that's done. Need a bit of solder on there I need to get off. Right, it's fairly clean. Get some of that off that side. Basically I need to put it back in the board and test it. So I'll test it before reassembling it completely. Okay, let's put it back in its board. And got to be very careful to get them exactly flat when you do this, otherwise your knob will have an offset, if you see what I mean. It's no good having a knob with a slight offset on it. Right, that's back in. I'm not going to clean it, I can't be bothered, it's my piece of equipment. If it was somebody else's I was repairing, then I would clean it. So let's get it all back together and see what happens. So there we are then, all back together. I didn't bother putting used elastic on the plugs that go into the board. It's not going to get any vibration and they're never going to come out. So, and I haven't screwed in all the screws, just in case. So I think the time now is to press the dreaded power button. See if it either blows up, doesn't work, or works perfectly. Oh, well, we've got 6 volts, that's a good sign. I can see the cameras doing weird things. I wonder if I can turn off this. No, don't know why it's doing that, but I didn't think it did it earlier. But anyway, let's try adjusting this now. Right. Before, of course, it was jumping when I was turning it down to a high voltage. So I'll go right up now, not that it makes much difference. 8, 15, 14, 13, 12. I think a sure sign is when you get to 0 and keep turning it anti-clockwise, and then it will suddenly jump up. But I'd say that's a good fix. A good fix that is. And that bit of grease I put in there into the shaft encoder should stop any future oxidization. Yeah, that's what I find is annoying about this power supply. You've got to press this button here to adjust your voltage, but you've only got a few seconds after you've touched it and turned your voltage. If you want to go back and do it again, if you're not quick enough, it turns off and you've got to press the button again. And so, but it's a minor problem. Of course, that also selects current limiting, which is That's 210 milliamps. So let's give the other side a bit of a try again, because if it's got the same problem, it'd be a good idea to do it now while it's in a state of being disemboweled, if that's the right expression. Let's go up and down. See, that one is completely perfect. As I said, I didn't use that one so much, the right hand channel. So, but if it develops a fault, I'll just do what I've just done on the left hand supply. I'm too lazy to take all that apart and do the job properly until it needs doing. So let's turn it off. I'll get all the rest of the... There you are, they're back in position, and if it goes wrong now I should be really annoyed, but I think that's perfect. I can wind it and wind it, it still doesn't increment rather than decrement. Anyway, what's this one doing? Okay, fine. Yeah, it's a nice power supply, but I wish they'd used better quality rotary shaft encoders. I'm sure they must be available that would last a bit longer than these, because it could be very disastrous on a power supply if you suddenly get a massively high voltage on a circuit. Anyway, I think that's about it, so hope you enjoyed it, and bye for now.